Laura here for oh no, we're in Legal Talk Tuesday. I don't know what we're doing because we are almost an hour and a half behind. We apologize. I'm sure all of you were anxiously waiting by your computer at 11:30 and curious as to what has happened to us. Not really, but we had the opportunity to go on a really cool local podcast called The Shrimp Tank. And so we had a really good time there, and we went over a little bit and kept talking and visiting. There's some cool dudes there, so we were visiting with them for a little bit about MyVirtual.Lawyer, and here we are. So we are both finally home and settled in and ready to chat with you about turkey and death. We're about 1 week away from Thanksgiving and the beginning of all of the, family holiday time for, most people in Arkansas. And Laura and I are hoping that you have a holiday filled with food and fun, but we also think that it's the perfect time when everyone is there together to kind of gather around the table. You're sitting in the living room playing games, whatever. Bring up some more serious discussions. So yes, you're the lawyer, or we're the lawyers, and so we come. You can be a lawyer too. We're the lawyers, so we are expected at Thanksgiving probably to answer questions. I don't know about Laura, but when I go to family events, there's at least one person that's asking me a legal question. But it's really important to kind of talk about your estate planning, and what better time than when you're all together. And so I'm not really suggesting that you get into politics or who should win Dancing with the Stars, season 142, but finding a way to talk about estate planning to, your captive audience of carb digesters couldn't be more perfect. And the old adage of the only two certain things in life are death and taxes will change next week, at least for us, to death and turkey. So we're going to give you a few tips today on how to have that kind of difficult, awkward situation with your loved ones, because really, it's one of the best things that you can do for your family members, even if it seems really grim and awkward.
Exactly. So we're just going to give you a few tips on kind of having that conversation, keeping it light, not being too intense about it, especially during the holidays. It's just, like Brooke said, a great time to kind of, put thoughts in people's brains about, hey, have you thought about this? This happened to, somebody I know. So tip number one for when you're thinking about how you're going to start this conversation with your family over Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it might be where you have these family gatherings, tip number one is to plan ahead. I don't mean like make an outline and, plan super hardcore on all the
agenda.
Exactly. We don't need to talk about all the things you're going to discuss in depth or anything like that. Just kind of go in with a few thoughts on how you want to approach the topic. It's like Brooke said, people don't like to talk about it. It makes them think about their own mortality, and nobody really likes to do that, but they really should and need to, because it makes life so much easier for not just them, but everybody else around them when the eventuality of death does come. It's one of those things you always have to pay your taxes. You're going to eat some turkey, unless you're a vegetarian, on the holidays. So might as well kind of bring up a few topics. Think about a few different scenarios of, maybe if somebody mentions X or Y, then I can mention A, B, and C. And just, think about what might be some good points of the day to bring things up, but be flexible based on what's happening in the moments of the day. Kind of pick where it sounds right, pick where there's a good kind of interjection point. So tip number one is planning ahead and kind of thinking about what you might want to say, what topics you might want to bring up. Number two is once you start talking about something, don't make it like an interrogation or anything like that. Talk about something personal. Tell a story. People listen to stories. They don't necessarily want to listen to you asking questions about, detailed information about their wills, or if they've, made a plan for if they have to be hospitalized, all that kind of stuff. Don't just jump in a conversation with, hey, mom, have you set up your powers of attorney yet? She might not even know what that is. Just tell a story, make it more, what I would call palatable for the people, because you actually want them to listen and hear you, as opposed to you just talking at them using big words and things that they don't really want to talk about on a holiday. So a couple of good examples maybe are, hey, I was just, sitting around the table. I was just thinking about how I have a good friend named Jan, and it was kind of crazy. She had to go to the hospital last week. I think I've told you guys that she has MS, and it was a surprise for her and for everyone that, you know, she had this kind of emergency situation. She, you know, couldn't see very well. She couldn't walk. They had to take her in an ambulance. And she was telling me how weird it was that she kept having to answer all these questions about legal documents and what she wanted them to do or not do if, you know, the situation came where she couldn't breathe or whatever it might be. And it was really kind of freaking her out. And you guys know, because I talk about Jan all the time, you guys know that her family doesn't live nearby. And, you know, so it just kind of got me thinking about that for myself. Or something like, hey, I got freaked out the other day because my neighbor apparently had a seizure at home, and all of a sudden I hear all these sirens and stuff, and look outside on the front, you know, walk out to the front porch, and there are ambulances, and there were a lot of people and hoopla, and it really got me thinking about, oh my gosh, what, you know, I live alone, or you guys are here alone, or whatever it might be. Again, just tell those kinds of stories, say how it's gotten you thinking, and a story is going to make people get, you know, they're more likely to comment or talk about it or tell their own stories. Oh yeah, somebody in my church had this happen. So it really, you know, softly kind of slip in. It got me thinking about myself, and it kind of nudged the conversation to, I don't know if you guys have thought about that, but it really got me thinking about myself. So just, again, personal stories are better than just, hey, have you done this yet? So that's just something to think about for tip number 2.
Yeah, and so number 3 is don't talk about it all at once. I think that also goes to people cannot retain a large amount of information, nor do they want to listen to big, lengthy things. So there are a lot of things to talk about when you're talking about end of life, or even when you're alive planning. So you don't want to overwhelm them with too much detail. And you've heard Laura and I talk about all the documents that are needed and things to consider for health, long-term care, wills. Not all the dirty dishes in the sink need to be thrown out in order to find a couple of clean ones. So you're going to pick what you're most concerned about. So and it can be personalized to the individual. I know my grandma is very old, and my grandfather has dementia, and that's a conversation I'm going to be having next week for their long-term planning. But it took a while for me to get them to even do any planning whatsoever at all. And every time I would visit, there were little Post-it notes all over her house with whose name got what. You know, I mean, I did not sneak in there and put my name on things that I wanted, but that was kind of her method. And hey, you guys are going to figure it out whenever I'm gone. But you know, you really want to be very specific about what you're talking about. So an example could be a healthcare power of attorney. So if you have family members who are older, parents, grandparents, you know, focus on that, because a healthcare power of attorney is really crucial to discuss and decide while that person is still able to make those decisions. Because if you've listened to us before, you know that once the individual does not have the capacity, unfortunately, I prepared most of these documents for my grandpa before he lost capacity. But if they don't have capacity, then they're not valid and they're not enforceable. So you want to make sure to get ahead of that. And so even though it's an uncomfortable conversation, it's really important to help your family members and also yourself when you're dealing with that. Keep it high level too. So don't try to talk about too many details of the money and health. If you're in a room of people, try to keep it really high level, using those stories kind of as your guide. You know, it's not a great way to start the conversation. Hey, how much money do you have? Where is this going? What am I getting in this? You know, that's not the type of conversation we're suggesting that you have. Or, you know, hey, tell me exactly how much your business made in total revenue this year. That's not a conversation that you need to be having. But there's no need to ask your brother, for instance, how much money he has in his savings account, to mention that you just added your child as a payable on death beneficiary to yours is kind of a way to segue into that. So it's not as confrontational. It's more, hey, I've done this. Have you considered this? Have you thought about that? And, you know, they'll probably appreciate, because it's likely they have not thought about that. And no one needs to remind your grandfather that his, you know, fourth serving of pie maybe wasn't the best idea, to casually mention how glad you are that you added your husband as a power of attorney in case you, bust a gut after your second piece of pie. So, you can keep it lighthearted. You can joke about it, personalize it to the individual. And, you know, you don't necessarily have to have one-on-ones with everyone, but you want to make sure that it's on your family's radar and on your radar if you haven't thought about it.
Exactly. And tip number 5, the last one, is really to listen. And this is probably one of the more important ones because there's no need to cause a huge conflict or fight to start these kinds of conversations. People don't want to have them, but there are soft ways that you can introduce the topics. But we encourage you to listen to your audience, read the room. At least, at the end of the day, you may have planted a few seeds that can start to grow in their minds about, oh, maybe, Laura said this, maybe I should really kind of think about it, or she mentioned X, Y, and Z. We don't have that. We probably should think about it. So listen to what people are saying. If they're not, receiving it very well, then maybe move on to a different topic. But, listen to what they're saying, but also in that listening, kind of keep track. See what sparked their interest or what they've said that they wanted to talk further about. So listening is another kind of good thing to not only not push too far, but also keep that information in your mind for, whatever you might be able to use in the future as, hey, remember last month at Thanksgiving, we were talking about this. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about that with you. So that's our Legal Talk Tuesday today. We appreciate you guys joining us late and watching us later, even though it's definitely later when you're watching us now since we're a little bit late joining. But just to wrap up for today, we wanted to talk about kind of some soft approaches to have some conversations about end-of-life planning for individuals and for assets and things like that at the perfect timing of Thanksgiving holidays and the holidays around Christmas and Hanukkah, where you're going to be together in a room anyway. So tip number 1, plan ahead. Tip number 2, talk about something personal. Tell a story as opposed to asking a bunch of questions. Don't talk about everything at once. Don't talk about all the different things that you need to do to plan for the end of your life. Just pick 1 or 2 things that might be significant for a particular person. Tip number 4 is keep it high level. Don't get too entrenched in all the details. If you're not an attorney, if you haven't gone through this process before, you might not know all the details. So you don't need to go and be all up in the X, Y's, and Z's of the legalese. So, and tip number 5 is to listen. So we appreciate you guys joining us today, and we're going to skip next week because it's Thanksgiving, and we're going to enjoy time with our families. And so happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you here. And I think the next one will be in December. Is that right? No.
Yes. Yeah. Thanksgiving is late this year. Yep.
I don't know what day and month it is.
That's 3rd, I think.
3rd. Perfect. So join us in 2 weeks, and we'll try to be back on track at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday in 2 weeks. And you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you. Thanks so much.